What would be a bit of advice you'd give to, I guess, young eskrimadors, people getting into, I guess Serrada in particular, but Eskrima in general, what would be a bit of advice for them to just, besides practice, for them to improve and grow as an eskrimador?
Well, gosh, you killed it by saying besides practice.
Well, we all know that one.
Okay, no, it's better to do a little bit like every day on a consistent basis, or at least several times a week, rather than let too much time go by and try to catch up. And I've studied psychology and neuroscience. That it just works better to have a more consistent effort. And the fact is, if you like doing something, it doesn't matter if it's martial arts or pottery or whatever you get into. If you have a passion for it, you will find the time to do it. You will put the time and energy into it. And hopefully, if you're getting into Eskrima, you find that you love the art and that you want to practice, and that you get a natural high from the excitement of doing this and developing new skills and confidence that come with it. It is a very remarkable art, even among martial arts. And so I would say finding passion is probably about the most important thing. That'll fuel everything else. The other thing would be this: you need to be open-minded and ask questions. Hopefully you have a teacher that allows that and is willing to let you explore beyond the boundaries of just the school. At the beginning, focus on one art, because if you understand one art and then you go and look at something else, then you can see the difference between the two. Okay, then you know the difference between this and that. Otherwise, it's what the old-timers used to call spaghetti eskrima. People take a little bit from one art, a little bit from another, and throw it together and think it all works. And maybe it does, but here's the thing: each system has its own timing and its own sense of movement. So if you learn each one discreetly, you have two sets of tactics that you can use. If someone is effective against one of your tactics, you shift, make them have to react to something a little bit different. But if you don't understand the underlying technical and timing bases of each system, you're exploring kind of kind of like a map of the New World in the 1600s versus a map that you might get today.
The East Coast presence of Serrada is spotty at best. What would be some advice, some warnings you'd have for Serrada New York as we move forward?
I don't know, any warnings I'd give you, you'd have to know the local turf. Watch your six. Keep your eyes open, watch your six. There's a certain level of unpredictability in martial arts. We've talked about fragile egos. A lot of people are attracted to martial arts because they're seeking personal power, and they're not all well-balanced individuals. But let's get off of that one. In terms of suggestion for the growth of it there, oh God, if you could just get one or two instructors to come out and visit every year, bringing me out. I'd love to come out. That's one. Carlito's going to be out in somewhere on the East Coast this year. If you can get him to come in and do a day with you guys. I'm a believer in exposing yourself to as much of the original generation of instructors as possible. And none of us are getting younger. I mean, we're all kind of, at this point, mid-50s into our late 60s. So, 10 years from now, we might not be an available resource. There's already some very good people doing it. Oh, helicopter time. You want to bring guest instructors in. And this also can include instructors from other systems. Check out who you think is credible. I know there's some good people out there. Network with folks on the East Coast. I've mentioned Peter Friedman up in New Hampshire. His instructor knew Angel Cabales, then had this, respect for Serrada there. And Peter's a well-connected guy, and he's got a big heart. He'd be someone really good, to network with. What are some other good arts? Balintawak, if there's people that come through. Study what they do. Balintawak comes from the same area that Serrada comes from. Dos Pares, East Coast is dominant from Dionisio, Juni Cagnetti's, Dos Pares lineage. Out here on the West Coast, we see just as much of Cacoys as we do of Juni's. They're a different flavor. If you can get a look at what Cacoy's material looks like, and again, you seem to, as an individual, you seem very open-minded to investigating what others are doing. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Serrada is not designed to combat other systems, but you need to know what other systems are doing in order to see how Serrada matches up against them. One difference I saw between competing in the Philippines in 1989 and in the U.S. in 88 through 90 or 91 for the stick fighting was the level or quality of officiating. And we've caught up quite a bit in this country since then, okay? But what I noticed back then was you had, in this country, people who were 2 or 3 years experience, heck, maybe 1 year's experience, sitting as judges, for competitions. And over in the Philippines, you had people with 30, 40, maybe even 50 years experience as judges for the competition. And people like that, they see a lot more going on than less experienced people, but they also know all the backstories. They can tell you how this style matches up against that style. And it takes a very experienced eye to develop that. Sonny Umpad used to tell his students that he wasn't teaching them how to fight. He said he was teaching them how to see. And that's a very profound statement. I agree with that one to a large degree. If something surprises you in a fight, you're at a disadvantage because now you have to think about it, and that's a slow process. That's why Angel had the 12 angle system, so that you develop reflexes against certain looks of attacks without having to think about what each one meant. Now his teacher, Dison, originally had something like 58 angles from what I've been told. Not unlike Kitty Tercy has 63, 62, 63 angles. And a lot of those angles are repetitive. And as Angel said, in a fight, the difference between targeting the eye, the temple, or the ear is so subtle. People move. You can't necessarily, be that accurate. Maybe some people can, but this is an art that can make an average person a formidable fighter because of the skills that it imparts. And you don't need to be super accurate with a weapon, and that kind of a skill to be effective. I'm not saying it doesn't help, but a hit in the head is a hit in the head. It's certainly going to get somebody's attention as long as they're still awake.